Hey everybody, today we're going to go over 3 of the most important settings on your camera, that is ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Okay, the first one we're going to go over is the ISO option on your camera, and that's pretty basic. It's just how bright or how dark your picture is going to be. One thing you do have to keep in mind though is the grain or the noise. That basically means how many pixels you're going to be able to see. Pixels are just what make up an image. So to put it easily, this is sea salt, this is regular salt. You see how nice and fine-grained the regular salt is, as opposed to all the little dots that you see in the sea salt. You don't want sea salt, you want regular salt. The lower your ISO, it's gonna be darker, but it's gonna be finer grain like the regular salt, so it's gonna be smooth. And if you need to bring it up, if you bring it up too high, depending on the circumstance, it's gonna come out like this, grainy, and you don't want that. So try your best to keep it low and add light in other ways. The second one we're gonna go over is shutter speed. This one's important because if you're in an instance where you're trying to take a picture of something like a runner or a Ferris wheel, then you're going to need to capture that picture quickly. So if I were to toss this here, and you try to screenshot that picture, it might not come out so sharp. If I were to slowly bring it across, then your screenshot is most likely going to be more in focus and sharp than if I tossed it, right? So that's shutter speed. If you have a very fast shutter speed, you'll be able to capture that motion and everything's going to be clear, right? All the details. If you have a slow shutter speed, you can still get a clear picture, just not of something that's running across. Also, with shutter speed, as you go faster, you might be able to capture that picture, but the faster the shutter speed, the less light is coming in, because the actual shutter is opening and closing, and so that's the light that's coming in. If you open, close, barely any light got through. If you open, light comes through, closes, then you have more light. So the faster the shutter speed, the darker it's going to be. If you're somewhere outdoors where there's a lot of light and you're trying to capture a runner, absolutely, bring it all the way up. The last one I'm gonna go over is aperture. So that one's also referred to as f-stop because on your camera it does say f dash a number. It's the same thing I'm talking about. Right now you see me all in focus. You don't see that TV in the back. That's because of the aperture that I have, the setting that I have. I think I have it at 1.4. So you see me really clearly. That is because of depth of field. So the more aperture you have, the bigger it is open, the more depth of field you have. The more closed off your aperture is, you're gonna see that in focus, you're gonna see me in focus, so it's gonna look like we're closer together. I'm the same distance, but with your camera, you can make me in focus or you can make all of it in focus, more or less, you know? Okay, that being said, I do just want to mention that there are no best camera settings. There is no one. Depends on what you're shooting, on what day, outside, inside, how many people, how quickly, all are variables. So I cannot tell you, nobody can tell you what's the best, camera setting. It doesn't exist. You just need to know these 3 things and you'll be able to figure out what is the best camera setting for what you're doing at the time. Alright, so now that you know the 3 different settings on your camera, I'm going to show you 3 examples of each picture so you'll be able to see the difference of changing your settings. I do just want to say before we go into the examples that I know I said ISO controls the brightness of your photo, but I don't want you to be confused with the other 2. Shutter and aperture also bring in more or less light to your photo depending on what settings you have. That being said, we're going to move on to our first example. Here's ISO. The first photo is way underexposed. You can barely see what's going on. It's super dark and not clear at all. The second photo is shot at 500 ISO. You can see everything way clearer and it definitely looks better lighting wise. The third photo I shot at 2500 ISO. Now clearly this is a drastic difference, but I just wanted to show you what it would look like. The whites are way too white and it's kind of blowing over everything, so you can't see a lot of details. And the problem with this is that when you're going into post and editing all your photos, you're not going to be able to bring the highlights down enough to get the information back. The second example is shutter speed. Water is a great example to show how quickly your lens or your shutter are going off. The first photo I shot at 1/20th of a second, so you can tell it's super blurry. It's not fast enough to capture such a fast motion. The second photo I shot at 1/200th of a second, way faster. This is probably what we see with our bare eye, but it does have a little bit of movement still. And the third photo I shot at 1/640th of a second. This is way clearer. I can see the water separating. Fast shutter is a great way to stop things in motion. It's like your freezing time. And the last slide here is aperture, or f-stop. I shot the first photo at f2.8. You can see that the only thing in focus is the headphones. Now if you look at the second photo, I shot that at f9. You're able to see what's behind the headphones a lot clearer. And the third photo I shot at f22. You're clearly able to see the entire room and the whole mess going on in the back. So this is the difference between an open and a more closed off aperture. You're able to see more in the background or in the foreground of your object. This is also how you get that bokeh effect when you're shooting portraits.